This is MFG Out Loud. Courageous conversations about sales and marketing for today's manufacturers. With your hosts, Ray Zaganto and Allison DeFore.
Hey, Trailblazers, thank you and welcome to another episode of MFG Out Loud. This is, I believe, episode 27. I've got to double check that. But we're really excited to have someone really special today. He went from intern to CEO and has turned a small company into a mighty force. And we're so excited to have Brent Hardman, CEO of Powell, joining us today. So welcome, Brent.
Thanks for having me, Allison. I'm excited to be here and, look forward to our conversation today.
Me too. Now, let me give you a quick intro. Oh, and by the way, I am flying solo today. Ray is out here in California, actually, working on a big consulting gig and is really sorry that he couldn't be with us today. So I'm sorry, Brent, but it's just you and me today.
We got the A team today.
I'll try to do it justice.
Yeah, I got it. Yeah.
Okay, so everybody listening, you need to know some background on Powell, because this is a really cool company. They've been providing customized equipment for the chemical processing industry for more than 50 years. And they've developed a complete line of products for the production, dilution, handling of various chemicals, some of which I can't even pronounce, but things like chlorine, bleach, sodium, hydroxide, methanol, all that really fun stuff that you love to handle without gloves. I'm just kidding. But these guys are pros at it. And Brent started at Powell as an intern back in
I started 91.
Yeah.
Yeah.
24 years, started as an intern, and back when there were a handful of employees, and he has helped transform this business and worked his way up to CEO and then stepped on the gas some more. So that's what we're going to talk about today, is his story and, where he's taken the company, risks and rewards. And I'm super excited for everybody to hear this. Brent, I feel like your and Powell's story is a lot like David and Goliath, small but mighty as hell. Would you agree?
Yeah, I think it is. I mean, we certainly have positioned ourselves into being a leader in our industry, specifically around sodium hypochlorite or bleach production and processing equipment. We build in our technology, we build skids, and our technology is used in about, it's used all over the world, but it's been here locally in North America. About 80% of the hypochlorite bleach that's made was made on our technology. That's right here in St. Louis. That was made here in St. Louis, Michigan. So for all of you don't know, Michigan has the unique advantage of being able to, kind of identify where we're at with our hand. So, if we're here, we're right dead center in the middle of the state, not to be confused with St. Louis, Missouri, with the big arch. So, yeah.
And I have a question for you. So if I visit St. Louis, Michigan, do I go with the Shark Shack or do I go with Tony's, home of the giant steak sandwich? Or is there?
Very good question. So the issue that you have, though, is Tony's actually caught on fire 2 weeks ago.
Oh.
So the giant steak sandwich wouldn't be an option today, but it is big and it's great. Or you can get the BLT, which comes with a pound of bacon on it as well. So we would have to go with the Shark Shot is what you'd have to go with today. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Well, I just wanted, people listening, I think it's cool to, first of all, I never knew there was a St. Louis, Michigan, and I'm from Indiana originally. So it's really cool for me to learn new things. And I think that's one of our favorite parts about having this podcast is that Ray and I, even though we've been around for 30 years in business and manufacturing, we learn so much every week from really cool people like you. And so it's really one of the, I think the best things about doing this is learning. So I want listening to know a little bit more about your town and where they should grab some good grub. So we're super thrilled to have you on the show today. And I would like us to jump right in to another courageous conversation. So When business leadership transitions to the next generation, which you've been part of, even though it wasn't a family member, you were there long enough, I think, to be like family.
Mhm.
The typical approach is evolution. And I feel like what you've done seems more like revolution. So I was curious to know, was it easy to get buy-in along the way as you were making these suggested changes or, like your big ideas? Was it hard to get buy-in, and what was that like? What opportunities and challenges have you faced?
Yeah, we were in a unique situation. Obviously, I have two other business partners, and yeah, it was a unique situation. But we did see it as a third generation taking over the business. We all three of us, for the most part, two of us for sure. This is the only place that we really knew. Kind of grew up in that intern, and then grew up with the company, and our other business partner has 20 years experience here. So we did really see it and feel it as a third generation taking over. And really the funny story I always tell about this is it's like your dad handing you the keys to his brand new car, right? And what's the first words that always come out of his mouth? Don't wreck it. Don't wreck it, right? We got it going. It's what we wanted to do. Don't wreck it. But the issue with that is that our vision of where we wanted to be with the company was directly different from Dwayne Powell, who was who we bought the company from and who built it up to what it was or is today. It was definitely different. It's just different, no different than a son would see things different than his dad, right? But the trick into it is, how do you carry on the tradition of success that we've had and the stewardship that we kind of carry with his ideals, and his vision of what he wanted to do. So a buy-in is a very slow transition, right? Because I had one particular employee just shortly after we took over management of the company, and unfortunately that happened because Dwayne passed away. But I had one particular employee come up to me and says, you've got some big shoes to fill. And I'm like, yeah, and you kind of get a little bit nervous about that whole situation, right? But in that, it just takes time. And there's a big void that leaves, regardless of the transition. There's always going to be a void and a vacuum. And you've got to figure out a way, unless you've got a really good plan up front, you've got to figure out a way to fill that void and that vacuum. Unfortunately, we didn't have the time to plan necessarily for Dwayne being out of the business. So really where we started is kind of developing believable goals and plans that was easy to discuss and easy to get buy-in in. And we had to continually ask ourselves why, all the time. Why are we doing this? Why are we doing that? Why are you going to do this? Why are we changing that? Why? And not only having the conversation at the management level, but all the way down to, the guys that work on the floor. And yeah, buy-in was difficult, and it takes time to do. I think, to me, the biggest not only was it a benefit, but the biggest challenge in all of that was coming up with reasonable, believable goals and plans of what you're going to do to change or how things are going to progress.
Right. And so for people listening, would you recommend succession planning on the fly? Or would
No, not at all. No, not even in a hurried instant if you can avoid it.
Right.
I think it would be the best if you put things in place in well enough time. It's like doing your will, right?
Right.
Or any of that. It's putting that stuff in place because the unexpected will happen. And it's better just a peace of mind to have that stuff in place as you can without having to rush and hurry at the back end side. So, sure.
Yeah. Well, so do you feel like the size of Powell, which is not large, right? You're like 40
40 employees. Yeah.
employees. Does this give you an advantage, do you think? And if so, how do you leverage that?
Yeah, couple things. It's a good question, by the way. We can take advantage of it, and we take advantage of it in a couple different ways. For one, Dwayne he had this saying back in the day. He always said that he didn't always make the right decision, but he made it fast, right? So, and the lesson learned was not to say that he didn't give it any thought in making the decision, but to learn not to stop and wait, right? You needed to make a decision, especially when you're, in the position of CEO, and people are looking to you to make decisions so they can move on and do what they need to do. That's the lesson learned, is not to stop and wait and ponder it forever. It's you're going to mess up. You're going to screw up. You're probably going to make some wrong decisions sometimes, but just accept that as part of the day-to-day and move on. I think you can become more impacted in the wrong way by pausing to make a decision sometimes, and you can just be making the wrong decision, then correcting it. So there are advantages. And so in that, with kind of taking Dwayne's mantra that he had before that we always laugh about now, but in that, we can take a structured idea and we can make a decision on that pretty quickly. So we're lean enough to do that. The challenge is, on the flip side, is having the resources to have that idea come to reality, right?
Yeah.
And so because we're not a big company, we don't have lots of independent resources to do all the things that we always want to do. So we don't want to end up in this rob Peter to pay Paul situation where we can't get anything done because we're doing too many things. So there's a couple different ways that we handle that and we maintain that to keep that under check. One is technology. We've always been a huge advocate of technology and ingraining it and embedding it into everything we do. Right? We wouldn't even, in the old days, we wouldn't even be able to have this sort of stuff, right? I mean, at literally no cost, we can sit down and have a conversation, a face-to-face conversation like this, when you're on the West Coast and I'm in Little St. Louis, Michigan, 3-hour time zone apart, and we can have this conversation. And not only can we have this conversation, we can record it and we can share it out to whoever wants to see it, and and take that in and make it their own. So technology has just got to be broad. It just got to be bred into everything, and we've done that forever. That's always something that we've done, not only with the devices that we use and the technology we use day to day, but in our processes and even in our products. We do those things. So huge advocate of technology and incorporating those into every facet that you can to take advantage of that.
Well, and you're the one, and correct me if I'm wrong, you're the one that suggested and brought in the EOS system, right?
Correct, yeah. Yeah, so I got that through right shortly after Dwayne passed away. I actually got involved with a Vistage, tech Vistage group here locally, and that's made a whole bunch of difference for myself in growing and learning how to lead a company and do the things that I need to do. But in that in that group is where I learned about EOS, and that timing is everything in life, right?
Yes.
And this came along for us at the exact right time when we needed it. As I mentioned before, when Dwayne was gone, there was a huge vacuum. And an inherent problem that we had was the team that Dwayne had built for the company that he wanted was not the team and the skill sets that we needed for the team that we needed for the company we wanted.
Right.
Two totally different things. And not only that, but there was a huge vacuum that still had to be filled when Dwayne left. So EOS came around at the exact right time for us in terms of being able to look in the mirror at ourselves and ask those hard questions as to, who we want to be and why we want to be that, and what are our goals, what are our aspirations, what do we want to do, and having meeting after meeting after meeting and beating ideas to death, right? to come up with it and help us figure out who it is. Who are we without Dwayne now?
Mm-hmm.
And the EOS system came around at the exact right time that we needed to help us answer that question. It's been all the difference.
So it was a real identity transformation.
It is. Not so much externally so much, because our brand is very strong. It's inside. Yeah. It's internal and that's always the hardest part, right? Regardless if it's internal to yourself or an organization, looking inward and making those positive changes are always hard and always difficult to get through. But if you stick with it, we've found that there's been immeasurable benefit to it. And it's made all the difference in us and our outlook, and how, instead of just feeling we had to measure up to what it was that Dwayne had set for us, we set our own goals to go beyond that. And that's made all the difference.
Well, that's that acceleration that I was talking about earlier when I introduced you, that really caught my attention with your story and impressed me so much. And I guess my quick question back to what we were talking about with Dwayne before we move on, do you feel like he gave you permission to fail?
Yeah, I do. Actually, I know that he did, in terms of conversations that I had with him towards the end. And he told me, he said, listen, you're gonna make wrong decisions, and that's gonna happen. What really will make you successful is how you adapt to that, right? Everybody can break their arm patting themselves on the back when they make the right decisions, right? And all of a sudden you got to walk sideways through the door because your ego is so wide. Yeah. But it's really being able to accept those failures and turn those around and make those, the biggest opportunities that you can. Mm-hmm. And Dwayne and I had some conversations about that, even though we didn't have anything specific about, like this particular situation. It was a very needed and required word of advice and discussion that him and I had before we had to say goodbye. So,
I love that. Well, and regarding, just to back up one sec, what you were talking about a moment ago, when you redefined internally, like I always describe to my manufacturing clients, marketing happens from the inside out.
Yeah.
So do you feel like your internal shift or identity refresh, if you will, affected your external marketing, if you will, which to me, it's everything. It's sales, it's marketing, it's the face of the company, it's your culture. And how have people responded to it?
Yeah, it's a good question. Yeah, it certainly has changed our marketing and our sales aspect of the business, without a question. Just even without that, losing Dwayne was a huge part of that too, because, one of the things I always told him, I said, no disrespect, but it's always easier for you. For one, he was 6'4", a big guy with a beard, and he stood out in a crowd, right? He was very memorable. And not only that, but his last name was Powell, so that helps when you hand them a business card and your last name is Powell. That helps, so then somebody, for somebody like me that's trying to, promote us and trying to be memorable and doing what we do, when Dwayne's not there, that made it more difficult, right? Because everybody was looking for the guy that they had heard about, the 6'4" guy that talks about bleach with a passion, right? So yeah, there were some different avenues that we had to look at that. And the other thing that we also realized is, even though you need a face of the company and an organization, it can't be the only face and the only voice of the organization. Right. And that's what we had to some extent before. I was privileged enough to be able to work alongside Dwayne in a lot of things in public forum. So he was trying to get me more involved as more of the face of the company. But one thing and I kind of talked about those challenges, but the big thing is when we took it forward, I didn't want to be the only face and voice of the company. We needed other people to be out there and to be recognizable as the face and voice of Powell. So in that, what we did is we kind of looked at the way we were marketing and the way we were doing selling, where it wasn't always going to be, Brent out there, the one in face-to-face in front of the clients doing the selling. We needed other salespeople to be that person and to do that for us. And so we changed that a little bit, which has helped out. On the marketing aspect, we've started to do things like this, where obviously this is my voice, but we've also started to incorporate, videos. So like, what you had a couple episodes ago with Darren Mitchell and the stuff that he's doing on Trout River, it's awesome, unbelievable. And I plagiarize him all the time. So Darren, I apologize for that, but I plagiarize him.
Man.
I know. I plagiarize him all the time in what he, not necessarily exactly, but the things that he is doing in the video side. And we're starting to get into that. So we're starting to put on video out on our, new YouTube channel. We're starting to roll out a new website. So we're really starting to try to brand ourselves more outside of just Dwayne and Powell, right? So that has definitely changed.
Well, and that's in my mind because I'm a huge fan of salespeople, because I believe that marketing exists not something that you do at people, but because of them and on behalf of them. And I feel like the main goal of it obviously is to support sales. So if you're doing that effectively, your salespeople are your brand ambassadors. They are the face of the company to whoever they're working with. So I think you brought up a really great point that I think you fall into a trap when the owner is the face of the company, or one person, let's say, because what happens, like you said, when, if some tragedy strikes, you're in a pinch. So yeah, I think that I'm glad we touched on that, because I think that is very interesting and important part of your story. Now, I was wondering, you have a remarkable global reach for a company your size, right? 40 countries.
Yeah.
So how did you scale that? Was it just, gradually over time, or what was that like?
Yeah, a little bit of that. I think it's a little bit organic in that just kind of, as we talked about, I mentioned before about, having 80% of the hypochlorite in North America made on our technologies. That doesn't leave very many people left, right? Yeah. So you've got to naturally, organically propagate out. But the other side of that is most of that organic growth was through our bleach products, our hypochlorite processing and production products, and our systems that we do. And the one thing that helps out is bleach is a seasonal commodity chemical. So when it's mostly used when it's warm out, right? So out there in California, they use a lot of it, and especially in their swimming pools and for water treatment applications and your laundry, right? People are doing more laundry. They're peeing in their pools more, and you're doing all that more in the summer than you are in the winter. Yep. Well, so that means more bleach demand is up in the winter, or up in the summer and down in the winter. Well, in the southern hemisphere, it's exactly the opposite of that, right? So what that allows us, though, when we do that is not only through organic growth, but that allows us to go concentrate in the off times in the southern hemisphere, and then come back to the northern hemisphere when in the winter time for us is when we concentrate on projects for the northern hemisphere, and our summer times when we concentrate on projects in the southern hemisphere. So that helps out and balance things out so that we don't have everybody hitting all at once and having to add in a whole bunch of resources for a whole bunch of products or projects, and then it dying off to absolutely zero as we're waiting for the next swing to come. So that's helped maintain that on that side of things. the industry that we're in also is, even though it's global, it's relatively small. I always joke around, it's kissing cousins, right? So you always have an employee that might work here and now they'll work over here. And so being successful at projects at one location in this sort of industry is paramount. And supporting and making not just successful for Powell, but even more so making it successful for our clients is absolutely paramount, because if they're successful, word of mouth advertising in this little niche business that we're in for that product line is all the difference, especially back in the day before the internet. And what we can be doing on that side and these sort of things. And then, the other thing that we've done a very good job with is our search engine optimization on our website. We get a ton of leads worldwide through our website all the time. I mean, we probably get on an average 30 to 40 decent leads a month, roughly. And for a business of only 40, employees worldwide, I feel that that's probably pretty good. And a lot of that's based on the support staff that we have here that does a great job with that and is always challenging the keywords and the search engine optimization and checking that out. And that's led us to be very well up to this point. And we are going to continue to push that through other marketing channels that you guys have talked about on here, digital marketing and those sort of things that we're going to continue to push as we move forward. So,
well, and the important part there is, and I think this goes along with the way that you run your business, it's about creating a connected system, right? It all has to work together. And I always liken it to the Hoberman sphere. So I've literally taken this to clients' offices before we start working together, and they probably think we're crazy. Like, why did you bring a toy? Yeah. But it's really cool. So when you open it up, if you've got part of it that's missing and not connected, it's not a whole sphere. And it also, think about it, if it was rolling down a hill, you're not going to get as much momentum.
Correct. Yeah.
And you risk... they're like those missed opportunities when you have those dormant spots. So I think it's good that you brought that up. And for me, all roads lead back to marketing. So I apologize. That's all right.
That's a great analogy. I'm going to plagiarize that too. So I'm not just stealing from Darren now. I'm stealing from you as well. So
love it. It's a compliment.
Yeah.
So, last question before we wrap up. I feel like in the brief time that I've known of you, you are a prolific problem solver. And I wondered if you could tell everyone listening about some risks. It could just be one, but a risk that you took that panned out big time, or maybe that flopped, but you learned a great deal from it. I think our audience would love to hear about that.
That's a great question. So you're talking about risk. So you mean other than buying a business with two partners, having no previous business ownership, and then knowing that we've got to change the culture? Is that the kind of risk that you're talking about, like that stuff?
Yeah, just tiny like that.
Other than that. Okay. No, I would say the biggest risk that that's a great question. The biggest risk that we have taken on since we've kind of taken over the business, I'd have to say it's the EOS process and that internal looking side of things. Challenging every aspect of not only our people but our processes and our products. Looking in that mirror and literally finding out those things and those issues that you need to solve and take care of to make you better, so they're not there the next day. And that in itself has been risky, because we were given quite frankly a very successful business that anybody that would be honored to have and to be given. And, you know, again, that gives you, that's like kind of back to that analogy of dad's brand new car, right? It's brand new. It's nothing wrong with it. Just here you go. Just don't wreck it. Don't wreck it. And, but the thought that we went after with that and our EOS evaluations and what we're doing is not only, we didn't want to wreck it, but we wanted to bring it back better than what it was when we took it, right? We wanted to be bigger and better. So, you know, we washed the car and we cleaned out the inside. We filled it up with a tank of gas, you know, and we did all those extra little things that needed to be done. And those are the some of the housekeeping things that, you know, metaphorically, that we're kind of doing now to help us with that new goals that we are setting for ourselves, to go beyond what just maybe even Dwayne thought it would be. So, so I'd say in that, I mean, I think the jury's still out whether it panned out, you know, for us or not. But, you know, we feel the strides that we've made over the last 2 years have been ginormous from where we were previously. So we feel great about the direction that we're going. You know, business is good for us. Our people are starting to get involved, and you know, they like their, you know, they're liking their jobs. We rearranged some people in some different seats into their strengths, brought in some new people that we needed to. So we're just so excited about what this could be and what this is going to turn out to. And, you know, the funny thing is kind of going back to your first question about, you know, is there, you know, it's typically an evolution or, you know, seems more like a revolution. When we first took over the business, you know, I always heard people talking about your journey, and that really never initially made any sense to me. I was like, what the hell is that? I didn't mean, but I've really, over the last 2 years, it has become crystal clear to me as to what that means and what that is. And, you know, it's not just, you know, what was the gross profit on this project and how much sales did we bring in this day? You know, and evolution to me would just be, you know, sometimes just growing that, you know, it's actually the journey of us changing and becoming what we need to become, not only for the market that we're in, but also the people of who we are. And that's been huge for us and that side of things and growing in that way. So I'm very proud of my team here. They have bent over backwards and done triple Lindy back somersaults for us, and they continue to do so. And then they've been a great bunch that we look forward to continuing our journey with them. So,
well, and based on what you just said, it made me think of, because I'll say this jokingly to some people that I look up to once in a while, and I'll say, gosh, I want to be you when I grow up. And, you know, and I'm 52. So they kind of, they look at me like, aren't you already grown up?
Yeah, I like that. Yeah.
And I think that's what I thought of when you were talking. Like, I think it's not about the destination, because if it was, it's like, when I grow up, I want to be X and then I'll be done. Mm-hmm. And it's like, you're never, I always feel like I'm always growing up. Yeah. And that's the journey part. It's the best part, really.
Yeah. I have another business owner that his name's Phil Sponsler, that he owns a business in Jackson, Michigan. He's a president of a business in Jackson, Michigan called Orbit Foreman. Him and I have got to know each other over the last few years, and it's definitely somebody I look up to. And that, you know, I like what you said. You know, when I grow up someday, I'd like to be, you know, as great as he is at this. So, but he always had a saying that, he has a saying that I stole from him, another plagiarism from me too. He's, you know, he has a saying. It says, "Go slow to go fast."
Yeah.
Right. And that's your inertia that you kind of mentioned earlier, right? So we're in the going slow phase to kind of build up our inertia so that we just don't plateau and we can keep on, you know, accelerating and keep going. And so I do tell our internal employees this all the time is, they get, some are just major taskmasters and they just want to cross things off the list and get it done and get it off their plate. But you got to get it, not only, I don't disagree, you got to get it done, but you got to get it done to what it needs to be for the quality of the work, but also for the lessons learned that are in there for getting it done, right?
Yep.
And beating it to death. And so we use that a lot, is go slow to go fast. And I think that helps, I think it helps support your inertia comment earlier, but I think it helped build the whole part of it, the buy-in part of it, that helps with your, when you look externally as to how you're marketing yourself and how you're selling yourself, that helps when you're looking internally, is that go slow to go fast kind of, ideal a part of it. So I fully credit Phil for that saying. And as I said, I plagiarize it all the time. So it's a great one.
Well, and I'll credit Steve Chandler, who's a mentor of mine, and he says it this way: let's slow down before we speed up.
Yeah.
And that's, I love that. And I think it's so true. And I had one quick question too, as we wrap up, regarding that internal change and that revolution that you caused, provoked, whatever. Because a lot of times clients that Ray and I work with, it's really hard to slow down and look inside. To really take a hard look at yourself, because that's a lot of the work that we do when we, help somebody rebrand or create a new strategy. It always starts with a look inside. And I know that's hard. It's hard as a person to do that, because then you might have to admit some faults or,
absolutely.
Wow, maybe I need to take a look at this and make some changes. And so I was curious, did you encounter a lot of resistance, either internally or with your partners, when it came to adopting these new ideas and executing on them?
Absolutely, 100%. If you didn't, you're doing something wrong.
Yeah.
All the time, knock down, drag out, argument, yelling, throwing things, whatever you needed to do. And, we're all, in one way or another, we're all dragging each other, kicking and screaming, right? It's not just one person. It's not just me. I kick and scream about some things, and then I got other people that kick and scream about others, but we're all dragging each other forward, kicking and screaming about some of the stuff, but we're moving forward, right? And after we get done with that, and we get done with the kicking and screaming, and we can all rationalize the ideas and the thoughts, and we beat it to death, then we have positive work forward, right? And then you can start, then that's just a little bit more inertia going forward. Yep. And what else you can do. But yeah, I would say if you didn't have that conflict and respectful conflict internally, and the self-awareness to, understand that you've got faults and everybody else has faults, and not holding that against them, but trying to work together to work through those, even at yourself or the others. That's the important part of it. And the goal is the end result, and trying to get there is the path of least resistance, right? And not everybody agrees to if it's a left or right turn, or if you need to fix that or fix this. But you've got to have those open and honest conversations. And I'll say that's one thing with our team, that we've got a lot closer because of it too. We're a lot better at dealing with each other as people than just as the CEO, the COO, the CFO, or and our director or chief revenue officer. And so that's been definitely positive. So
yeah. That's fantastic. Gosh, I'm pretty sure we could have a couple episodes with you. I just thank you so much for taking your time to spend time with me and to share with our audience, and just really to, I think, take this journey and not be afraid to take risks and buy a company And even though you didn't know exactly what to do, and I applaud you for that. And so thank you so much for being here.
I appreciate you having me on. And to be honest with you, I love what you and Ray are doing and putting together. The content that you guys have here on your podcast, they validate a lot of the things that we're trying to do and trying to implement. And I think it's such great source of information that you guys have started to pull together here that I'm glad that we finally were able to cross paths and this worked out and get to know you and Ray a little better and see, more frequently what it is that you guys are doing. So this is great. I appreciate it.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that very much. And on that note, thank you for the segue. For those of you who are listening, if you have not yet subscribed, please do so. You can go to mfgoutloud.com. And if you find value in this podcast and you would care to leave a 5-star review on Apple, much appreciated. And tell a colleague or a friend, because sharing is caring, and we want to grow this tribe of manufacturing trailblazers and keep having these courageous conversations. So thank you so much for being with us, for taking your time to listen, and everybody keep manufacturing out loud, because we need you. Take care, everybody.
Thank you for listening to MFG Out Loud with Ray Zaganto and Allison DeFore. You can subscribe and find show notes at mfgoutloud.com.